So we're going to talk about transformation, which is wrapped up in why memes don't work and don't do what you think they do, and how to get to a quote transformation and why this is a tricky word. So thank you to Christopher, who has been bugging me about doing this. He heard about some early work that we had that we sort of abandoned, which does explain why memes don't function the way you think. And that work was called The Realm of Transformative Coupling. That unfortunately was a poor name. With Christopher's help, I was able to fix this set of slides and get it built out correctly. And from that, all sorts of insights, because we have the later work that got integrated into this earlier work. And so let's talk about what this is for. I'm not going to tell you how to do something. That may happen. You may figure out on your own how to do something. I'm not going to tell you how to do something. The purpose of this model and this way of thinking is to help you to identify things in the world. In other words, to enhance your discernment. And remember, we're all about simple models and patterns. This is a simple model, actually. Maybe there's, quote, a lot of moving parts, but it's really simple model. Once you get it, you'll really get it. And the patterns are important. And that's what all the model videos are about. So if you haven't seen all my model videos, you really should, because they're super important to the channel. Now, transformation is not really a thing. And this, we're using it as sort of like a noun or a placeholder or some kind of adjective by itself. Oh, there's a transformation happening. What? And originally, that's not how they use the word, right? It's from transformam, alter, change the form of supernaturally. So this is originally what we would now refer to as a religious term. Even back in the Latin, it's changing in shape. But typically, transform needs a lot more context. Transforming from what into what. Those are the most important aspects, right? The fact that a change is happening is called Tuesday. Entropy, change is constant, right? So using it to just say change, you're going to change, that's already happening, with or without your approval and with or without your guidance or your intent. And that's one of the problems with using this word. And that's why this is not about transformation. It's about transformative coupling. Now, why does this matter that it's called transformative coupling? Because it changes the nature of this from individualistic, transformative, transformation, right, into a relationship, a coupling. So why do I think this is important? Well, the reason why I think this is important is because it explains what needs to happen. And therefore, when you're looking in the world, you can tell whether or not it's going to happen, or if it's just a temporary sort of part of the milieu, the chaos of the world. So, transformative coupling is built around an ideal. It works through the imaginal realm. Your interface to the imaginal realm is your imagination. It always starts with you looking up. That's proper way to understand the changes that you should make in your life. And again, this isn't really about, we'll say, you. I want you to use this to look at the world. And so what we'll do is we'll say, okay, the imaginal realm is the place where people go to couple with an ideal to make a change. If they're not doing that, the change is either going to be random and temporary or bad and temporary. Right? So if you say have a relationship with heroin, that is going to be a temporary bad relationship. Hopefully it doesn't end in death, like it does for very many, but that's not looking up towards an ideal. There's nothing ideal in taking any kind of drug, really. It might be necessary, but it's not an ideal. And the reason why you do that is because you imagine something about taking that drug. That's what entices you to take the drug. But there's an important way to think about this. So there's a human, you can see them. You can't necessarily see what's in the imaginal realm or what's in their imagination, but you can sometimes infer the ideal, or if they don't have one, because they might not have one, they might be, this is part of the problem with transformative coupling, they might be just changing, in which case you're not coupling with anything, right? So what happens is your imaginal realm is going to be split into three parts for the purposes of understanding it, right? So you get the person at the bottom, you've got their imagination, which is their interface to this realm. Obviously, this is not a physical realm, right? This is an ethereal realm. It's the realm of thoughts and emotions and passions, things like that. What you have at the bottom layer is this propositional understanding, okay? And the propositional understanding can enable story, description, and meme, okay? That is the way that everybody pretty much uses and has access to their imagination most readily, we'll say. But the problem with that is that it's a private context. It belongs to the person whose imagination it is and them alone. Now, that doesn't mean that two people can't kind of have a very similar or maybe even almost exactly the same private context. That is certainly possible. But my claim would be, because it's their private context, it's very hard to tell whether or not it's the same. And since the only access you have to it is propositional, and propositions are a little sticky because they're not very good at describing sort of at a level of detail that will tell you how shared is our context, you end up with things like stories. People have different interpretations of the same stories. Descriptions, people make different inferences from identical descriptions. And memes go nowhere. They never rise above this first section of the imaginal realm, and they come back down. And that's why if you show me, for example, a meme from the US version of the show The Office, very common set of memes, whatever you're trying to convey won't work because I haven't seen that show. And so those archetypal characters, if you're thinking of them that way, are not archetypal. And I don't know what they mean and what they represent. And I don't like the show. So I'm probably not going to be too happy about that meme to begin with. That's why memes don't actually function, because they don't do any coupling. They do a lot of change, but it's in your private context. It's stuck in this flat version of the world. And if we want to move up and sort of enhance this transformative coupling, we can go to the poetic way of informing the world. In the poetic way of informing the world, you suddenly have more tools. You have narrative, metaphor, and analogy. And these are connecting elements. They allow you to connect propositions in a way that mere propositions cannot do. Some of the ways that we know metaphor and analogy is from the fact that they break free from, we'll call it, a strict interpretation of propositions. And they stray into this area where, we're thinking about the propositions more in terms of relationship than in terms of pure description. In other words, they're more narrative than story. They're more metaphor than description. They're more analogy than meme. Because a meme just goes up and back down again. It just connects two things at the propositional level. An analogy connects two propositions within this poetic way of understanding the world. So you'll see this with people, the upgrade to the way people think. People say, he's always coming out with those metaphors, right? And people who come out with metaphors are generally considered smarter than people who can't. And there's nothing wrong with the people who can't, but it's good to know that this distinction exists within people that you meet. All right, so hopefully that is clear. This is why the poetic way of informing the world is important. See the knowledge engine video if you haven't already. That'll explain the difference between poetic and propositional in a different way. But we're really just talking about the same thing here. So let's go to the top third of the Imaginal Realm, which is called wholeness. The things, the tools that you require to do wholeness are myth, parable, and archetype. Okay, that allows for this reciprocal opening that gets you to include the right things while excluding the right things for the ideal that you're trying to couple with. That's really important. You can't maintain an ideal if you include everything, because if you include everything, you can't tell the ideal from any other thing. You can tell it from yourself. You couldn't tell it from other people. You couldn't tell one ideal from another. Obviously, there are multiple ideals in the world, in reality. So you need to be able to exclude things, but have this reciprocal opening towards realizing, oh, I haven't included all of the things that encompass the ideal. There's, to borrow from the ancient Greeks, an essence that I can never fully encompass, that I can never fully understand about whatever ideal I'm trying to reach. And that's okay. I keep reciprocally open to that possibility. This, I think, is a better way of considering reciprocal opening than, say, Dr. John Vervaeke does, because it's connected to this ideal, and the idea that the ideal is so much better than you. You'll always be missing some part of it. It may be a small part. It may be a large part. I don't know. You'll always be missing something about the ideal because you're insufficient. That doesn't mean you can't couple to it, right? You don't, quote, become one with it. I don't think that's a useful way to think about anything, right? But it is part of the wholeness that you become when you try to couple to that ideal. And that, we'll say, is a proper relationship with the ideal itself. Why is this important? This is important because this explains the motivation for people. Now, again, not all people are going to be looking at an ideal when they're changing or transforming or whatever. That's not going to happen, right? The good news about this is, if you don't think that's happening, if you think someone's just changing randomly, you can confront them and say, what is it that you're trying to do? What ideal are you trying to embody, for example? That might be a good way to think about it. Another way to think about this is to say, okay, this person thinks that they're copying Jordan Peterson. What do they see about Jordan Peterson that they think they're copying? Are they actually coupling with an ideal, or is their view of the ideal just not good? Or I could have the ideal to be Michael Jordan, but I'm not tall enough, I'm not talented enough, and I may be quicker than him, but I can't shoot a basketball that well, and I'm just not that tall. That's probably true for most people, so I'm not real caught up about it. So you can know when someone's pursuing an ideal that they're not going to be able to couple with due to just a skill set, right? Or a cognitive inability. Maybe they can't see enough of the ideal that they're trying to embody. Maybe you want to be Elon Musk, but again, Elon Musk and his brother get $750,000 when they were teenagers to go and try and fail at a bunch of businesses. That might make a big difference to how successful you can be, how quickly in life. And if you didn't get that, like if you're in your 20s, it's already too late. I'm not saying you can't do something like what Elon Musk did, but you better know the difference, right? Can't follow that ideal. It's okay. You can do other things, right? But you can't follow that ideal. That's why the ideals should be abstract. They should be more like Hercules, right? Than they should be like Elon Musk. Right? And you can help people with that process. And you can help yourself with the project. You can ask yourself, I'm changing all the time. What am I changing into? What ideal or ideals would I like to change into? Now, you may have heard things like this before, because so-called self-help, which there's no such thing, I don't know why they call it that, books, psychology, and psychologists will talk about this, right? It's just, I think this model is a much healthier way to engage. So hopefully this starts to explain. You can look out in the world, say, is this an analogy? Is it a metaphor? Is it proper? Because not all analogies and metaphors are proper. Are they making the right poetic connections? And that'll take some training on your part if you don't already have it. And fair enough, a lot of people have lost the poetic way of informing the world. Again, see the model video. I go over that in there. And so this is a real problem that we have today in society that we have to deal with. But hopefully you can see these things. You can start to understand the difference between story and narrative, which is really important. I also have a video on that. You might want to go over that video just to understand this a little bit more clearly. And once you understand that the process of transformative coupling and the process of so-called meaning making or meaning manifestation are the same thing, right? That doesn't mean that all meaning making is transformative coupling. I'm not trying to say that, right? But all transformative coupling is part of a meaning-making process. That is how you can understand your role within meaning itself, or in the meaning crisis, and how you can look at other people and figure out if they're in a meaning crisis. If they don't have ideals or they don't have good ideals, like, oh, I want to dress up as a minotaur and hang out with other people, they're called furries, unfortunately, who do the same thing. This is not a good ideal. You can kind of indicate that to them. Oh, I want to stay home all day and be the best video gamer on Twitch. This is a bad ideal. You can help them with that, right? Once you know that, once you can talk about ideals and transformation, once you understand the difference between story and narrative, once you're able to discuss these things in a much simpler language than I think what other people are giving you, with much easier, simpler models, then you can get people unstuck. You can see where they're stuck. You can get them unstuck. The early model videos will help with that. So if you haven't seen them, the various earliest videos on my channel, and they can help with all that. And hopefully you can start to understand that the ideal is wrapped up in the thing that I think everybody should value the most, but certainly I value the most, which is where you put your time, energy, and attention.